All right. This weekend, the name on the marquee has got to be Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson, who this past weekend at one on Amazon Prime, or one on Prime Video, one in Singapore, defeated Adriano Moraes by knockout via flying knee madness at 350 of round number 4, regaining his one flyweight championship. Mark, let me start with you first. Having watched this rematch, what was your impression and what were your takeaways from this devastating knockout? Getting some revenge with his own knee knockout against Moraes.
Yeah, how poetic was that, right? Finishes it with his own knee. That was pretty awesome. But this was a great fight. Both guys came to go to war, and there was some knocks on Moraes. The first fight, obviously, he finishes it in 2 rounds, but from DJ saying he was avoiding the fight and so on, he did not avoid this fight. He came to fight from jump. So did DJ. Both guys got tested early and often. From the first round, you could see how high level these two guys are. And honestly, as much as it was close, Moraes seemed to jump to a bit of an early lead. And he showed you how good he is, and that first fight was no fluke, because he takes round 1. In round 2, he has this beautiful sequence where he wobbles DJ with a head kick. DJ shoots and gets in deep in Moraes, and it's like, oh, okay, DJ's going to get him down. Nope, Moraes sprawls it, starts throwing big knees to a grounded DJ, and for a second it was like, oh, shit, like, are these knees going to do it again? But just that whole sequence shows you the level that Moraes is and what a tricky puzzle he is to solve. The size helps, of course, but he's a hell of a fighter. And then we get to round 3, and, you know, again, it's close, but it kind of feels like DJ might be 2 rounds in the hole. Granted, OneFC doesn't score by rounds. They score overall, like kind of pride-style scoring. But still, down 2. And despite the fact that he had already been aggressive all fight, you could tell he kind of decided, like, I need to crank this up to 100 right now. Mm-hmm. And later on, he called it zombie mode in the post-fight, saying that he just had to decide to eat shots and walk Moraes down. And that's exactly what he did. And it opened up his offense. Him walking Moraes down, making Moraes react, opened up DJ's offense big time. And he's landing much more. And it's risky because that power coming back from Moraes is very real. Like, he was clipping DJ a few different times. There were some big shots, step-in elbows, hooks. DJ got clipped a few times that you could tell he felt it, but he managed to eat it. But through that, you could sense the tide turning a bit because DJ was winning the exchanges. He was landing more. And then as we're getting into round 4, that tide, you feel it coming on even more, and it comes. He lands that big straight right, stings Moraes, and he's stumbling backwards across the whole cage. And the whole way, DJ is on him like glue. Like, every single stumble step that Moraes takes, DJ shuffles his feet forward with him, keeping him like inches away. And you can tell he's thinking about that knee the whole time. He's waiting for the placement. He's waiting for the timing. And he literally shuffles like 6-7 steps forward with Moraes as he falls backwards toward that cage. And then bang, kill shot. Couldn't land it more perfectly. I mean, you see the replay from the other side where you're seeing Moraes' face, and you realize how perfect that knee landed. It was crazy. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, puts him out and new. Enormous win for Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. A y'all must have forgot moment for him to a lot of people, I think, who were ready to kind of not count him amongst the flyweight elite anymore. And honestly, a reminder that he may still be the best flyweight on the planet, depending how you want to break that down. So, massive win for DJ. And he gets that one belt that a lot of people kind of originally assumed would be coming his way, but he had to work for that thing, and now he has it.
Absolutely. Omar, take us through the final sequence, that flying knee that finished it. What was your impressions and your takeaways?
I mean, it was a beautiful sequence. What started it more than anything was that right hand, that counter right hand that had Moraes stumbling back, and then he came in with the flying knee, the walk-off flying knee, because DJ already knew once he landed it that was that. And Moraes just kind of shutting down after that knee was kind of wild. No kind of pop-up, no... He like, his body just shut off completely. Yeah. It was very insane. DJ did, I think, what a lot of people were hoping DJ would do, but didn't know if he could do it against somebody like Moraes. And just like Mark said, the finish is almost unfair to the work that Moraes had done up until that point. Like if you just watch the clip of that finish, it doesn't tell the whole story is almost an understatement, because that fight was an absolute war from beginning to end. And I think it really got to a point where DJ's cardio and DJ's conditioning and his experience really took a big head in the end of that fight for rounds 3 and round 4, because you could see Moraes started to slow down quite considerably and DJ didn't. And once DJ's pressure started to go up, Moraes looked like somebody who was slowly but surely drowning in a sea of water. And that is exactly what ended up happening. DJ was on that kid's ass like very few that we've ever seen when it comes to pressure fighters. I mean, it was as good as it gets. I think his mobility, too, makes him very good at that pressure as well, because he's able to get in there, but he's able to get out when he needs to. Obviously, his defense in general, right, his ability to parry punches and slip punches, I think that also works in his favor when he's doing that pressure shit. And it helped that Moraes was already getting into that gassed realm, and moving, on your back foot the entire time doesn't help. So it was a beautiful performance from DJ. I think it really showed, and we've talked about it here often, that championship experience, that championship medal, that those moments where you're able to adjust after having gotten your ass semi-whipped for 2 rounds, because that's kind of what it was. I would argue that I think the first round I would still give to DJ, even having been on the ground. I think he did more damage on the ground. I think he was still active on the ground. I'm not dying on that hill. I'm glad I don't have to die on that hill. But at the end of the day, those rounds I think were a lot closer than even maybe some people will even give DJ credit for. But fantastic fight, fantastic win. Really made, I think, me and Mike eat crow as far as that's concerned. I was happy to. I love DJ. I was rooting for DJ. I even said it. I'm rooting for DJ. But Moraes was literally a tall order. No pun intended. That is a gigantic man for that weight class. And so it was a tall order, and I'm glad that DJ was able to find it, and he went through some shit. It's not like that was an easy road to go through. So credit to DJ, man. He really is arguably one of the greatest.
Man, I love Demetrious Johnson. One of the things I love about him, I love the flavors that there is in the sport of all these different personality types. And DJ is one of these guys. He might really take the cake. He treats this as such a job. Like he could be a guy working at GameStop. Like it's just a job to him. In his energy, the way he carries himself, the way he talks about, his fight coming up in interviews, it's just like he's bringing his lunch pail to work kind of guy. And he's like world champion fight. He's won like how many championship fights? He just doesn't care. Has zero interest in being a celebrity, and I love that. I'm like really tickled by it. I'm like, good for him, man. He just wants to show up and fight and get a check and go home.
Yeah,
to his family. Mark, what is next for DJ as now the one flyweight champion? What do you think?
So it's tough. If one does their own rankings, you can pull them up on their website if you have any interest in looking. But most of the guys who are in that title picture have taken recent losses to either Moraes or DJ and have not really put any streak together since that time. There's one guy, I believe his name is pronounced Kairat Akhmetov, who you could argue has maybe earned his way to a title shot. He's kind of right there. But this one, to me, feels like a trilogy that's got to be concluded. I mean, they gave DJ his rematch. Kind of feels right. Moraes should get his. And it's not like Moraes eked out a win and then DJ finished him. Like, it's been finish and finish. These are, in my opinion, far and away the best 2 flyweights in OneFC. I think they're head and shoulders above the rest of the roster. They're 1-1. They feel so evenly matched. Win or lose, Moraes showed that he still presents big danger to DJ the whole time he's in the cage with him. I think you got to settle this thing. I think we got to see who's the king and do this one more time.
Omar, agree, disagree? Anything else you want to posit?
I would have to agree. I'll be honest, though. I don't really know one's ranking system and their kind of the other fighters, frankly, that are there as well as I would, UFC or Bellator or even PFL for that matter. But I can tell you this. If you hit me with a Johnson Moraes 3,
I'm watching.
I'm down.
I got
I'm
one last
definitely
DJ
down.
question before we get off him. I kind of touched on this earlier. Best flyweight in the world. Is it Figueiredo? Is it Moreno? Would you still go DJ after this time? Where would you put DJ in that?
I've actually been thinking about this, to be honest. And my problem is the resume, right? Like, we all talk about resumes when it comes to greatest of all time.
I don't mean all time.
If
I
I
just
took
mean right now, who is the best fighter in the world right now?
Yeah, right now.
If I took them skill for skill, if I really thought about each one of their techniques, how they apply them, how they fight, and things like that, I would say that Demetrious Johnson is the greatest.
See, I always
right now.
I always suffer from the recency bias of the guy who most recently fought or is coming off of a win is the guy who I'm like, oh, he's the best.
Yeah.
I think
Realistically, though, like if I put Demetrious Johnson, if we go 1-for-1, Demetrious Johnson versus Figueiredo, I'm
Today.
picking Demetrious Johnson. It's not to say I don't think Figueiredo is a threat. I just think Demetrious Johnson is better. I love my boy Brandon Moreno. I just don't think he'd be able to beat Demetrious Johnson.
Yeah, I
You know
think
what I
I'd
mean?
be picking DJ too.
There's just-
It's wild. I don't know if if you're straight ranking them right now. I don't know if his recent resume, like maybe you have to say he's third just because the UFC resumes are stronger. But like if I'm picking the fights, I think I'm picking DJ in both fights, which is crazy. He's like 36, 37 now.
As far as
something
I'm-
like that.
36.
And it's not DJ's fault. Like, his resume is what it is, right? Like, he took the fights that were given to him. He didn't really cherry pick. He didn't really do much of it. He fought who he fought. He beat the shit out of everybody. It's not
Yeah,
really
I
his
wish
fault.
there was an avenue to see
You know what I
him
mean?
in the UFC again. Because I feel like the flyweight division has come up. Like to see him against Moreno, to see him against Figueiredo would be incredible. But even see him
Askarov.
against Kaikar France, against Askarov, against Pantoja, like I would love these fucking fights. I wish we could get him back here, but I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, at this point.
I would also love to see Henry.
Well, that too.
Henry 3.
Yeah.
But
I don't think Henry's
At
a
this
flyweight
point,
anymore, though.
you know,
I'll be the contrarian. I'll say that right now. I would give the mantle to Figueiredo over DJ. If they fought, I think I would pick Figueiredo. He's just such a juggernaut, man.
Yeah, I mean, totally fair.
Cool. All right, let's march on down the list. The night before in Singapore, One held a different event. One 160, not to be confusing. So let's break down these, both the main event and the co-main. Let's start with the main event in which Christian Lee in the lightweight division for One. Christian Lee defeats Yoon by TKO via devastating knees at 1 minute of the second round. Omar, why don't you talk about this one first?
bro, these knees are the ultimate equalizer, I feel like. And it really makes me wonder is if the reason they've been taken away is not necessarily because of how dangerous they are and how they could kill people, because frankly, there's a ton of shit that can still kill people that they're still allowing. But more so that, you know, there's not really a ton of technique I feel like goes into kneeing it down.
To be
the
clear,
opponent, right?
DJ did not knee
You
it
just
down
sort
the
of
opponent. DJ's would
did
have been
not.
perfectly legal in the UFC.
Absolutely.
No,
Yes.
there. Well, that is
He wasn't downed.
that is
He wasn't.
true.
Yeah,
I
he
guess
was. It didn't matter either way, but I'm just
he was
saying.
in the
Well,
middle of
the
down.
cage kept him up.
Yes,
Yeah. But anyway, continue.
yes,
We'll
yes. It was
figure
good
it certainly
timing.
was
Let's
down.
put it
Unreal
like that.
timing.
It was good timing. He was very down. He was on his hands and knees down. And so I wonder if it's just sort of like there's not really a ton of technique that goes into kneeing somebody when they're already down that I think comes into play. Either way, the finish didn't start with the knees being down, but he certainly ended it with the knees being down. And it was a vicious one. I mean, the man went flat on his stomach, dude. And it was really, really bad. I'm trying to see exactly what
Overhead,
started
right?
this thing here. And it's again off of these naked leg kicks. They love throwing weird leg kicks without having anything behind it. But again, vicious knees, vicious finish. Christian Lee, that Lee family is something special, man, because those guys are both of them are very, very talented.
Mark, you have anything to say about Christian Lee's devastating finish?
I sure do. I called that round 2 TKO, baby. If it wasn't for Tan Lee, I would have had a little sweep of one, but Tan blew it. We'll get to him. But yeah, Christian Lee came into this one like a man on a mission. Oak Yoon had never been finished. Christian Lee talked the whole lead up about how he wouldn't let it go to the judges again, and he'd finish Oak and he'd make it definitive. And it was kind of like, we'll see. And boy, did he ever deliver on that. From jump, he came out landing heavy shots on Oak. Oak landed some of his own too, but Lee was faster. It was his shots that were landing first. He knocked down Oak twice in the first with right hands over the shoulder, over the top. He was flowing in there. And at one point, the man hit a left Superman punch into a right calf kick with barely taking a step in between. It was one of the filthiest combos I've ever seen in my life. You should find it if you didn't see it. But yeah, he was flowing in there. He and then second round comes, he lands a third overhand right. It was the same punch, kept landing all fight. That's the one that drops Oak for good. Devastating knees, as Omar said, and he seals the deal, avenges his loss, takes back his belt, and makes a huge statement.
Sorry, I was just watching it again. It's just so brutal. I'm like, good guy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's you want to go into the co-main, or you want to talk about futures for
I'll
Lee?
say something about Lee quick. So it's another one where you have to wonder if they would do a trilogy, because obviously it's 1-1 now, and they did let Lee run it right back. But for some reason, at least on this one, I don't think that happens right away. Maybe just because it was a controversial decision for Oak in the first one, whereas this one was obviously finished, feels a lot more definitive for Lee. But matching him up is tough, so we may see it anyway, because Lee has kind of beaten like the whole top five in OneFC. So my only thought, and I don't know if there's really a way to do this in OneFC. It seems like they really work on the meritocracy. But I mentioned this last week. If you don't want to go right back with Oak, and he's kind of beating all these other guys, he hasn't fought Eddie Alvarez yet. I don't know what Eddie Alvarez is doing, but fuck if I wouldn't be excited as shit for Christian Lee and Eddie Alvarez to get into a cage across from each other. I mean, it probably sells more than any other fight they can make in that division. I'm sure Lee would jump at the chance to fight a legend like Eddie Alvarez. Eddie finally gets that title shot that he's been waiting for. Maybe he didn't earn it, but he finds a way to get it anyway. Like, that's where
he
I'm
waited
going.
for
So
it.
I don't know how realistic it is, but that would be a hell of a fight. I would love to see that fight.
Omar, agree, disagree?
I'd be down for Eddie Alvarez 100%. We were just talking about what the hell was going on with Eddie Alvarez and what he's been doing. He's been looking a little thickums lately in a lot of the videos I've been seeing. So, I know that lightweight here is 170. I'm just hoping that thickums is within the 170 parameters, because he's looking chunkies.
All right, in the co-main event in the featherweight division for one championship, Tang Kai defeats Tan Lei by unanimous decision. Omar, why don't you take this one apart first?
I got to say, I was a little surprised to see Lee get outstruck. His legs got chewed up quite a bit in that fight. He had Lee diving for takedowns in that fight, which I also found semi uncharacteristic from him. I don't know if I'm taking away from this fight how much better. I keep forgetting this kid's name. Tang Kai. I don't know if I should be taking away that Tang Kai looked a lot better this fight than he did in his last fight, or that Lee looked worse in this fight than he did in his last fight. Either way, it was a close fight. It was a fight that I thought was decisive, but it was definitely not a runaway fight by any stretch of the imagination. Each round was definitely fought for and contested for sure. Both guys ate big shots. Lee obviously ate a few of the bigger ones, especially when they were exchanging. And I'm pretty sure Lee's leg is going to be like all different sorts of colors.
It already was in the cage
the day after. So
his back of his right thigh, was it?
Man,
back of his right thigh? Or his hamstring, I should say.
Yeah, it was his.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That leg is absolutely chewed up, and even when he was throwing or when he was getting kicked in the fight, he ate a few of them fine. That's how it goes. And by the end of it, man, that foot, every time he got touched, he was gone. He was on the floor. So it was a good fight from Tang Kai, but I feel like I would like to see that fight again. I don't really know how this is going to work in one, but I think at some point I think it'd be worth seeing that fight again just to see if that's the case.
Mark, what's your take on the outcome of this one featherweight bout?
Yeah, I like this fight. I thought this was a really solid fight. Both guys are so fast, so explosive. But the story here was really, as Omar mentioned, it was just Tang Kai brutalizing the legs of Lee with kicks and even the body as well at times. And Lee, he would try to lunge in and find something big with his hands. But by the middle of round 2, you could tell that Tang Kai had already compromised the legs of Tan Lee. And honestly, he just presented a really difficult puzzle for Lee to solve. Like, his movement is so good. He did so well defensively not to let anything land clean. And he's just wrecking these legs, and he's taking away that explosiveness that Tan Lee is known for. He comes in with these big sudden movements, and he was still trying them, but I'm sure it wasn't quite the same level that it would have been otherwise. So a tough night for Lee. He battled, to his credit. He still had his share of moments where he had some success, like with the blitzes, like I'm mentioning. He was landing some big shots right up into the final bell, but Tang Kai was the better fighter all night long. Like Omar said, competitive fight, but a clear winner. And he becomes the first Chinese male champion in major MMA, which is a hell of a credential to have.
Wow.
So a nice,
crazy.
fantastic game plan for Tang Kai, and honestly, an intriguing showing from a kid who's still only 26.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Hard to believe that somebody hasn't come along in the UFC yet.
Yeah, has not happened.
I wonder how many of these guys really want to be. I don't know what the pay structure is or how any of that works over there, but a lot of those guys seem to be super happy on that side of the world.
Dude, one is huge.
I know the culture is very different, and DJ's been the one who's been very vocal about it. I think because he's seen, he's been the big star even in both of these cultures, where the U.S. Doesn't seem to appreciate DJ, I think, as a whole, the way the Asian culture and the Asian fan base does. And I think they appreciate fights for different reasons. In America, even places like the UK, some would even argue in Brazil, a lot of these early places where MMA sort of started to build, it's a bloodlust sport. Like, we're not happy unless somebody is dying, right? If Luke Rockhold isn't bleeding all over somebody's face, like, MMA fans are we're just not impressed, right? In Asia, motherfucker will pass from guard to side control and the crowd is losing it. Like, the crowd will absolutely go wild for it. So there's just a different appreciation, I think, and the different cultures and the way they approach their fights and how they see them, that I don't know if a lot of these guys in Asia really want to deal with that on that side of the pond, on this side of the pond, I should say, if they're getting paid well over there. And a lot of these Thai guys, man, the way I understand that culture over there, specifically Thai fighters and Muay Thai fighters, and growing up in Thailand and in that culture, they're fighting every week for a paycheck. Like, they're in, they're out, they're in, they're out. So for them to go to this sort of arena where they're not having to fight every week and they're getting paid substantially more than what they're getting paid in those rings, I don't think they're complaining and wanting much. You know what I mean? So I don't know how much of a draw the UFC is to that side, to those folks on that side of the world.
Anything you guys want to say about the future of Tang Kai?
It's tough to match him up, honestly, because there's not really any other true contender in that division right now. Kind of all the other top guys have recently taken losses, so I think he's got to maybe wait and let a couple fights shake themselves out.
Possibly. Quite possibly.